gamers. Today we'll be talking about the worst landmarks in Age of Empires 4, in my opinion, as of right now, 2025 June. So let's get started. I split them up by ages, so we're gonna do Feudal Age, then Castle Age, and Imperial Age. And I looked through all the civilizations. There are some landmarks that are situational, so they're not great, but they are getting use, and they're not the worst thing in the game. So, number one, we're gonna start with English, with the feudal landmark, and this might come as a surprise, especially to a lot of people in maybe lower leagues, but one of the worst landmarks in the game is, in my opinion, Council Hall. The reason why Council Hall is bad is, when the game released, Council Hall was like the best landmark. It's because we didn't know how to play, the game was a lot slower, so getting that Council Hall double producing or producing longbows twice as fast was incredibly good. I mean, the other landmarks were not even comparable to Council Hall. But over time, a lot of the landmarks got buffed, a lot of the landmarks got changed, and these kinds of longbow rushes are just not good anymore. So if you do go for Council Hall, the only thing you really get is 2 archer ranges immediately, but there's no matchup where you want to be making archers straight away. You want to be aggressive with either, spearman longbow, or you want to be aggressive with cavalry. So for that reason, Council Hall is basically just 2 archer ranges, and there's no real timing at the high level, at least, to do any kind of damage with longbows. Not to mention, if you are going for that landmark, the opponent knows what you're going to do. On the other hand, you have School of Cavalry. Even though technically it does pretty much more or less the same thing, opening with knights or going into pro scouts straight away with Rancher JD is a lot better. So you have 2 landmarks that are very similar in what they do, but one is just way better than the other. So number one worst landmark is Council Hall. The second one is one of the new civs, which is Knights Templar, and it is going to be Knights Hospitalier Age Up. I think this is a very, very bad age up. The bonus is pretty bad, and also the unit you get from it is pretty bad. Now, I know that Knights Hospitaliers are great in Imperial, but I don't want to age up in Feudal so I can have a unit in Imperial, to make. Not to mention, by the time I get to Imperial, there's a lot better units to make anyway. And I just think that the bonus it also has increases the health of all civilian units 30% is pretty meh in the first place, especially when you're comparing them to the other ones or comparing this bonus to the other civilizations. Next landmark we'll be comparing, and this one is probably one of the worst ones actually in the game, is Jiangnan Tower. If you guys don't know what Jiangnan Tower is, it's Jushi's legacy landmark in Feudal Age. So they have Meditation Garden, which you see most of the time, and then you have Jiangnan Tower, which is really bad. I mean, what it does is basically nothing. Acts as a drop-off for Imperial officials for the taxes, that's it. And then you get 1 free unit whenever you build a barracks, archer range, or stable. And you receive a free villager when a town center is completed. The reason this landmark is terrible is because, let's say you're playing in Feudal, the only thing you're getting is, if you make 1 barracks, 1 archer range, you will get 1 archer and 1 spearman. And then the longer the game goes, eventually reach a point where you're massing production buildings, but then you're in Imperial and you're getting spearmen and archer and horsemen, which you kind of want to have crossbows, hand cannoneers, and knights. So I think this landmark is pretty bad. Obviously, we see it pretty often because people are going Meditation Garden into Jiangnan Tower for the Song Dynasty, but on its own, it is pretty bad. Now, that is for the feudal landmarks, and surprisingly, I thought I would think there's a lot more, bad landmarks in Feudal Age, but I genuinely think that the other landmarks are kind of medium or just really, really good. So that's it as far as the Feudal Age. That's pretty much it. And I have a thought on why this is. So basically, the later the ages are, I think there's more terrible landmarks in the game. And I think the reason for that is it is a lot easier for the developers to buff landmarks in Feudal Age than to buff the Imperial ones, because there's just a lot more Feudal Age games, like games that reach Feudal Age, than the games that reach to Imperial Age. Next one, we'll talk about Castle. Number 1, English, once again, and it is going to be King's Palace. Now, this landmark I think is pretty bad, and it's part of the reason why castle rushing with English is not really a thing. Whenever you play English, you usually go to town center into White Tower. So it serves as a protection keep for your, villagers, for your base in general. And you can also produce units out of it. You can produce any unit out of it, and it works faster. So you just get so much value from it. On the other hand, you have King's Palace, which is just a town center. That's it. So usually when you rush castle with, no matter which city you play, you rush castle and you get some kind of bonus you unlock in Castle Age with that landmark, or you unlock knights, or you unlock whatever else. Rushing castle with English, you get King's Palace, which is a second town center. So it kind of just drags your economy down, because now you need to double produce villagers, and it's going to take a while for that to pay off. So I just think that King's Palace would perhaps be a great landmark for other civilizations, but I think it's just a completely wrong landmark for English specifically. Next one we'll be talking about is the Abbasid. Now, Abbasid and Ayyubid, I am not going to go through Ayyubid landmarks because it is House of Wisdom, just because you can age up with 8 different age ups with Ayyubids in 3 different ages, so it's just too many. But I will mention one Abbasid wing, which is the military wing. So I think that Feudal Age military wing for Abbasid is great, but the castle one is pretty underwhelming for what it gives you. The only thing you unlock is you unlock an extra upgrade, which is composite bows, great upgrade, but you only get 2 camel riders. Now, getting 2 spearmen and 2 archers in Feudal Age is great, because 4 units immediately in Feudal Age is great. You can do a lot of things with it, but unlocking just 2 camel riders, or getting 2 camel riders when you age up to castle, is not very good. I kind of wish they gave them more units, because when you look at Ayyubid, for example, military wing, they get 1 desert raider in feudal, 3 in castle, and then they get 7 in imperial, and they get it every 2 minutes. Whereas Abbasid, you just kind of get units and that's it. Next one is the Ottoman, and I think this one comes to no surprise to anyone, but the Ottoman Age 3 landmark that I don't even know what it's called, because I have never built it in my life. Istanbul Imperial Palace is a terrible, terrible landmark. The reason for this is it gives you 3 extra vizier points, and it doubles the experience that you gain around the landmark when you create units. Now, why is it a terrible landmark? Well, the vizier points that already exist for Ottoman and that you can get without this landmark is all you need. So what I'm trying to say is, in normal games, all the vizier points that you are going to spend without this landmark, those are the vizier points you want. All the other ones are kind of like, and it's not really worth going this landmark just to unlock 3 extra points, because you don't have much value by getting those 3 extra vizier points, and then doubling the experience from production. Meh. What I would like to see for this landmark is if they created a unique vizier point specifically tied to it. So something that, a vizier point that you can only get by going for this landmark. But right now it is just not very good. And then Mehmed Imperial Army is just way better to begin with. So yeah. Next one, we'll be talking about Byzantine Age 3 landmark, which is the Gulp landmark, aka Cistern of the First Hill. Now, there is a very cool cheese build that you can do, the Jiggly Turd build, where you rush castle and you go cataphracts. I have a guide on that as well, on that build order. And then you gulp, aka you drink the flasks, they heal you. It's very cheesy, it's very strong, but it falls off pretty rapidly. It's good for the first couple of minutes when you age up, and then it just completely plummets. One of the suggestions that I've had a long time ago is, if you go for this landmark, you can maybe unlock level 6 cisterns, where instead of capping cisterns at 5, maybe you can get a level 6. But in this situation, I think it's pretty bad, and the other one will be better 99.9% of the time. And we move to another KT age up. We talked about the feudal one, but there's another one that I think is pretty bad and pretty underwhelming, and that landmark is Kingdom of Castile. So what it does is units near sacred sites gain 20% damage and regenerate health. So initially when I saw this, I thought this is great, especially if you're playing, some kind of sacred site victory. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. But the range on it is pretty bad, and if the opponent sees that you are on this age up, they will just not fight you on sacred sites, so the bonus is most of the time completely useless. Maybe on King of the Hill, this would be a great one to take, but more often than not, it's just completely useless. And then the units that you get from that from this age up are Genitors. They're basically the horsemen, javelin throwers, and for some reason, they're just a lot worse than regular javelin throwers. So regular javelin throwers from Malian have very high base damage and bonus against ranged, but the Genitors actually have only 5 base damage, which means if they're shooting at men-at-arms, they're doing 1 damage per hit. And that's pretty bad, especially because they're a castle unit. Not to mention, once you go Imperial, just like javelin throwers for Malians, they're not very good there, so pretty underwhelming age up. That's it for Castle. Let's move on to the Imperial. And of course, let's start with the landmark that I don't even know when was the last time anyone has seen, which is College of Artillery. Now, why is this a bad one? Well, you get Royal Republicans, Royal Cannons, and you get access to Culverins, which are also Royal Culverins. So why is this a bad landmark? Well, there's been some siege changes, if you guys remember, a couple of months ago, where the siege has been completely reworked. So now you have Royal Republican, which is like, okay, that's nice. You have Royal Cannons, which is basically a cannon with just a bit more HP and damage. So it's like, okay. And then you get Culverins, which are basically the same role as cannons. So this landmark unlocks a Bombard, which is Culverin, right? Bombard type unit. But you already have cannon, which is insanely good in general. And then you have Republican, and that's everything that the landmark does, right? So they do 30% more damage, and you contain siege and gunpowder technologies, and they train units and research technologies 50% faster. It's just very underwhelming, especially when you compare it to the Red Palace, which gives all your town centers and all your keeps Arbalest emplacement, and the Red Palace itself is extremely strong. So I feel like College of Artillery doesn't need buffs, it needs a rework, because it gives you ability to create 2 units which do the same thing. The next one we'll be talking about is the Mongol White Stupa. Now this landmark is terrible, and I actually stopped yesterday or 2 days ago and I thought about it and I was like, wait, this landmark is actually really bad. So back in the day when the game came out, Kaghanat Palace was pretty bad. What it was giving was pretty bad. Kaghanat Palace did get buff over time. White Stupa, on the other hand, if I remember correctly, did not. Now, this used to be a great landmark because you would get stone and you could upgrade your towers, you can use it for upgrades, and again, you guessed it, the game was a lot slower. But the White Stupa, what it gives you is 200 stone per minute. That's it. Doesn't give you anything else. Now you might be like, well, Mongol can't gather stone, so you're getting 240 stone per minute. But you can actually get stone with Mongol, and not only with Ubu, but if you're trading in Imperial, you will get stone too, which basically nullifies the complete point of this landmark. Not to mention, the resources per minute it gives are very bad. To put in comparison to some of the other civilizations, there are civilizations where their Imperial landmark gives you 1,000 resources per minute, and Mongol one gives you 240. Which is pretty bad and underwhelming. I would say maybe if it was like 500 stone a minute, maybe you can consider going for it, but in this state, it is very bad landmark. Not to mention, Kaghanat Palace gives you, I think the minimum amount of resources Kaghanat Palace can give you is 580 or something like that. If you get the cheapest unit types, that's what it gives you. So, yeah, and it gives you gold, right? Stupa gives you stone. This gives you gold, which you can use for pretty much whatever you want. Not to mention, it gives you unique units like Pow Pow, STBs, Palace Guards, Rus Warrior Monks, and Rus Knights that you normally cannot create. So, yeah, and there are multiple landmarks in the game that give over 1,000 resources per minute, by the way, or around 1,000 resources per minute. So, yeah. Next one is Once again, we're going to go back to it. Military Wing Abbasid. If you guys don't know, Military Wing Abbasid is just... The castle one has some uses, like you get 2 camels, you can debuff the enemy, right? The Military Wing in Imperial is just so sad and so depressing. So, if you guys don't know, if you age up with Military Wing in Imperial, you get 3 Hand Cannoneers. That's it. You get 3 Hand Cannoneers. Obviously, you unlock the upgrades, but that's it. So let me just phrase this in numbers. There are civilizations out there that are getting 1,000 resources per minute from their Imperial landmark for the rest of the game. You're constantly just getting resources per minute. Every minute, 1,000. Abbasid Military Wing in Imperial gives you 3 Hand Cannoneers one time. If they made it so that you get 3 Hand Cannoneers every minute or every 2 minutes, it would be somewhat decent. But in this current situation, it is pretty bad. Next one we'll be talking about is the Delhi Imperial landmark, which is going to be the Hisar Academy. This landmark on paper is very good. I think it gives you about... I actually think it gives you about 1,000 resources, maybe 900 resources per minute if you have the upgrades. So it gives you 12 food per minute based on the number of techs researched. Does not apply to emplacements, and it's a university as well. So why is this landmark not good if it's giving you so many resources? Well, it's giving you a resource that is the most useless at the most useless point for that resource in the game, which is Imperial food. So in Imperial, you usually have too much food. No matter which civ you play, you have way too much food. So it is just not that great. On the other hand, the landmark that is fighting against, aka competing, is Palace of the Sultan, that produces a unit that you cannot normally make, which is Hand Cannoneer Elephant. But not only that, it is also giving you resources per minute, but it is giving you gold instead of food. It's giving you food and gold, basically, but it's giving you gold. Whereas Hisar Academy just gives you food per minute, making it pretty bad. Nothing else unique to it. No unique upgrades tied or faster research or anything like that. Next one we'll be talking about is the Ottoman landmark, and that landmark is going to be Seagate Castle. Seagate Castle is their Imperial castle landmark. And it is just not very good. Comparing it to Istanbul Observatory, which is infinitely better. But not only that, every Imperial landmark or castle landmark that is also a keep for no matter which civ gives you something unique, something that is very good. For example, Red Palace unlocks the Arbalest attack for all your keeps and town centers. Berkshire has super long range. And it just, the DPS on it is high. The Malian Keep landmark has poison arrows and stealths your units. All these things are very useful and very good. But Seagate Castle gives you a buff. First of all, the attacks that it has are just normal keep attacks, nothing unique about it. It has great bombarding placement, but so do their regular keeps. And what it gives you is an aura that increases trade and trade ship movement by 30% and armor by 8. Armor by 8 is almost useless because if the enemy is in your trade, that's already not a good sign. But giving you movement speed by 30%, I've seen some people in lower league say, oh, that's really good because your trade is a lot better and you get a lot of gold. But the question is, how much gold do you really need? You already have a vizier point that gives you extra gold. Do you really need a landmark to further boost that gold income? Like, what are you doing with all that gold, right? So I feel like it's pretty bad, pretty underwhelming, and most of the time it's used to, like, if you ever see it, it's used to like hold a sacred side if you're going for sacred side victor or something like that. And not to mention, in order to get this bonus of trade and trade ship movement speed increased, you actually have to put keeps now in the back of your base where your trade is, instead of having keeps forward to protect your base or your economy or whatever else. So pretty bad. The next one we'll be talking about is going to be the Malian landmark. And that landmark is not the keep landmark, it is Griot Bara. Now, Greer Bara on paper seems really good, and I've tried it a couple of times, and the only times that I've found it to be good and useful is in like some meme games where I was super far ahead and then I make 120 scouts and I landmark snipe the opponent. I think the Siege Festival is great, increases damage basically on the torches and all your siege that does damage to buildings. But then you have Military Festival, which is pretty bad and pretty underwhelming. Increases all unit production speed by 50% for 90 seconds. If you're playing in Imperial and this is an Imperial landmark, you will have plenty of production buildings. Like, you do not need to boost your production buildings further. And then you have Food Festival, which again increases food gather rate by 50% for 90 seconds. We talked about it earlier with History Academy. You don't want an Imperial landmark giving you food. That is just, it's just not needed. And then you go back to Siege Festival, and while it is good, you're not going to be needing it all the time. It is very, very situational, and you do not get a lot of value. A lot of the Imperial landmarks, again, give you a lot of resources per minute, or they give you some instant value, and I feel like Greer Bara is just so situational that I would always just go for Fort of the Huntress to make sure that I don't lose the gold, or I don't die to something, or I can hold Sacred Side, or whatever else. So I feel like Greer Bara needs some buffs, whether in the festivals or just add something else to it, because in the current state it is pretty bad. And then we have the last one, the last worst landmark in the game, which is going to be the Byzantine one, and that is the Palatine School. So when trading Limitanei, Varangian Guard, and Cataphracts, or Chiropractors, there's a 30% chance to also spawn one at this landmark. Now, first of all, let's compare it to the Foreign Engineering Company that gives you access to Nest of Bees, Pow Pow, and Royal Cannons that you cannot make usually. So it allows you to produce siege units with olive oil, so you don't need to spend gold on siege units, which is just incredible. Not only that, but wait, there's more. Mercenaries also receive various unique technologies. So what this does is all your mercenary units that you have receive the unique buffs that Civ from where the mercenaries from gets. So for example, if you have longbows, if you go for this landmark, your longbows will also get the rapid fire ability. I think that's what it's called. That makes your longbows shoot way faster. It just gives you so much value, so much value, and long-term value, short-term value. And then you have Palatine School, which when you age up, first of all, you have no immediate value. It doesn't buff any of the units. What this landmark does is basically, this is what it reads. This is what the description reads. If you're ahead, get further ahead. Because this assumes, like, you don't want to make this for Limitanei, right? You get 30% chance to get another Limitanei. You would want this for Varangian Guards or Cataphracts, right? But if you're spamming Varangian Guards and Cataphracts and you're Imperial, I mean, you're probably in a good spot already. So why would you ever go for a landmark that just basically makes things for you even better, right? Like, it gives you extra units that you're producing, because if you can produce those units, you're already in a good spot. And also, if you're already in a good spot, why wouldn't you go for this so you can get siege that you normally wouldn't have access to? So for that reason, I feel like Palatine School is pretty ass and probably needs another addition to it, like another buff, something that you get along with it, because with its current state, I think I've seen Palatine School at the high level maybe once in the hundreds and hundreds of games I've played against Byzantine. So pretty underwhelming. And that is it. Those are, in my opinion, the worst landmarks in Age of Empires 4. I went through all of them, thought about all of them, and that is my conclusion. So 7 Imperial landmarks, 5 castle, and 3 feudal landmarks. And I think, once again, the reason we have so many bad Imperial landmarks is because there's not as many games going to Imperial as there are in castle and feudal age. If you thought some landmark is terrible, but it's not on the list, well, it's probably because it's either really good or it's kind of mid-tier. Now, I was thinking about making another video another time about the best landmarks in Age of Empires 4 that probably could use a nerf, or just they're just really good. I think making a tier on the mid landmarks probably not needed, because if I do the best landmarks and the worst, you can kind of figure out which are the ones that are just okay. So yeah, that's it. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you're watching live on Twitch and YouTube, let's keep going.